everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone to my Headshot Photography podcast. Today, I have very special guests. Dani Diamond is an icon in photography world. I don't think he even needs any introduction. But what I want to say, and we talk a little bit prior we start the podcast, that I started my headshot and portrait photography with one of your courses. You were one of my biggest inspiration. As I said, when I started, I've learned so much from you. I've been following your work for decades now. You are, as I said, an icon in this industry. And I first of all, I just want to say thank you for being inspiration not only for me but for so many photographers. Your work speak itself. Like as I said, you don't need too much introduction. Most people know you anyways. But I'm extremely honored to have you on the show, and thank you for accepting my invitation. And I want to dive into your photography world because there's so much to unpack, and I have tons of questions. Hopefully we will be able to cover all of them. So thank you again for and there's such a quick notice because we've been talking for the last couple of days and you're just like, let's do it. And that usually doesn't happen often. People are just like, oh, let's talk in 2 months or something. And you
Yeah,
were like
well, when I'm
24 hours.
excited, boom! I gotta do it right here, right now. I can't wait. So I'm
Okay.
excited for this. Thank you so much for having me. It's my honor.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Okay, so let me start with, of course, obvious question. How did you get into photography industry? Because I talked to so many different photographers, and it's interesting for me that everyone has a kind of different path. And there are people coming from all sorts of different industries. There's some people in corporate world, there's lawyers, there's people who have some kind of passion and they're getting into this kind of professional photography world. What was your story? Because I never actually tried to find some information, but I couldn't. So it seems like you're hiding this a little bit. So let's talk about little bit about, like, what is your story behind getting into this world?
Okay. Well, when I was in high school, I was about not high school, college. I was 19, 20 years old, and I met a friend who had a camera. And at that time, photography was not popular. There was no Instagram. Even Facebook was really non-existent. There's no Facebook pages. And so I was fascinated by the camera. There wasn't so much information online about it, just a couple of YouTube videos you could find. So I was intrigued by the technical side of photography. And so I went out and I bought myself a camera, and it started with me just taking pictures of landscapes, flowers, things. I was more of an introvert. I was not so good at directing people at that time. So I was shooting just things that really you don't have to direct. But I think that the more important question is what fueled me to continue doing it throughout my life and turning it into a career. And this is a question I've never been asked. So I got to say that, we all go through hard times in our lives, and people find all kinds of outlets, or sometimes people find addictions. And for me, my addiction, instead of being unhealthy, I went towards something healthy. And every time I was going through something hard, I'll pick up my camera, go out and take pictures. And this was throughout my entire 20s, and now in my 30s. Still to this day, my escape is photography, and that's what keeps me going.
Wow, that you know what, and I've been hearing this so many times, and then it's interesting that photography is a kind of therapy for so many people. I had this, like, a short story. I had this gentleman in one of the workshops I was conducting, and he was just like in the corporate world, and he says photography was his escape of literally dealing with his stress, with anxiety. So there is something that it's just kind of pattern I see in so many people's life, that photography can be something which is like healing for them. So let's kind of move forward a little bit. And how did you get into shooting all this static stuff, something which you don't have to pose, into shooting and taking pictures of people? Because that's also another skill, right, which we have to kind of have in order to connect with somebody, to pose them, to somehow create this image with a person. And I know it's a completely different set of skills we have to have. So what was your path into this?
Well, I noticed early on that the most engagement I was getting on my work, which I was posting at Facebook and then through different social media channels, the most engagement and feedback I was getting was when I was taking pictures of actual people, when I
Hmm.
was capturing emotion. And so I knew right away that that's, where I want to go. Because for me, um, sharing my photography and getting that attention was like a drug to me. I love
Hmm.
that engagement. So for me, my goal was never to really do the photography. It was to share the photography and then people giving me attention. I love that. That's what social media is. So I wanted to create something that connected to the most amount of people who then gave me feedback. So that's how I knew that I needed to shoot people. And then if you want to know more about my process of photographing people, I'm happy to share that as well.
Absolutely. We're going to dive into this.
Yeah.
So before we kind of go into that topic, I want to talk a little bit about the course you created. And the reason I'm asking is because I think your course was one of the first one which was kind of available online. Because at that time, YouTube was kind of starting off. There's not much information. I also remember back in the days, now is a completely different story. Photographers were not really willing to share any knowledge. And, there is you coming into the place, basically spitting out all the knowledge, all the experience, all this, little tricks, all those like knowledgeable informations which could take any photographer to completely different level. Can you tell me about that process, how this whole thing even come about? And like I know probably because I was went through f stoppers, right?
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
can you tell
So
me?
when I was starting, it was very hard to find good information online.
Mhm,
I went to YouTube, and you were able to find videos about the technical side of
mhm,
photography. You were able. I picked up a Scott Kelby book. He spelled out everything about editing and shooting, everything from a technical standpoint.
mhm,
But that didn't speak to me
mhm,
because it was. I went out. I technically took a perfect picture, but it was nothing special. I figured out what it takes to create an amazing portrait that connects to a random viewer,
mhm,
and I broke it down in my head as a scientific process. And then once I figured out what I was doing, I was like, wow, I figured out the science behind taking an amazing portrait aside from the technical
mhm,
settings of the camera. And I said, you know what? I wasn't able to find any information about this. I'm going to share it with people. So at first I did it through f-stoppers, and that kind of blew up. All the
yeah,
articles I was writing for them was always going viral. So eventually I said, you know what? Let's make a tutorial. And
mhm,
so I looked at the different options that there was, and I went with RGG EDU Pro. It
mhm,
was called. And I was so happy to share my process with the world because they kept on asking about it. Everyone wanted to know. I said, you know what, let me just make a video explaining everything. So that was pretty much what happened. And obviously, as much as I'm a photographer, I'm more of a businessman. I went to business school. So I was always, from the get-go, I approached photography as a business. And for me, knowing that I could share my information, as much of a good person I am, I
mhm.
also knew that that was another way of making income was to make a tutorial about it.
Absolutely. So let me go back a little bit and let me talk a little bit. Well, I'm going to ask you about your kind of path with lighting because I remember, and we talk a little bit about it, that at that time everyone was talking about, strobes and studios and all this stuff, and you came along and you just like, no, you can use any natural light, you can create amazing portraits. And I think what was fascinating about it was the fact that it's got kind of gives you, like, at least for me, gives me a little bit of freedom, right? Where
Right.
I don't have to go after these expensive tools. You can use whatever is available out there. And you were the kind of you were the person who was just like, I don't know, maybe not convincing, but you open up like a new door for a lot of photographers who they're starting off, they want to kind of make the mark, they want to learn something, but they didn't want to invest tons of money. But now we talk, you just slowly progress into shooting in a studio using artificial light. So tell me about this process a little bit, how
Okay.
this whole thing unfold and how this whole thing
Sure.
kind of work for the years.
I got to point out from all the interviews I've done over the past 15 years, this is my favorite so far because you're asking the right questions.
Hmm.
Okay.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
when I first started, I followed what everyone else does. I went and I bought four Alien B flash heads, and I set up all four in the studio. Uh, and I started taking pictures. I'm like, oh my god, they're not looking good, you know.
Yeah.
And I was completely overwhelmed. Now, I never went to school for photography, you have to understand. So everything I was figuring out was kind of on my own, which
Mhm.
is, I think, the best way to learn art, because you're not going by a set of rules. You're not constricted within a box. You're always thinking outside the box, just trying to figure things out, trial and error. So I right away put the lights away because I couldn't figure out how to use them. And I went out and I just learned how to master natural light really, really well. And once I figured that out, I said, you know what? People don't care about the details, the back end details, the settings, the technical stuff. What people care about is seeing good results. So I focused on getting good results. And then once I was able to get that and share that, and then people are like, wow, what lighting are you using? I said, this is just natural light. It's simple. That's when I was able to bring attention to how great images could be using natural light only, because I was just breaking rules to begin with. And I was impressing people with solid work, and no one cares about your degrees, your camera, your settings, your lighting. They don't care about that. They want to see good results. Once you have a good result to show, you can then show people the process and they'll be like, wow. And that's pretty
Mhm.
much how it went down.
So, so the next question I want to ask you, I want to dive in a little bit deeper into this about the good results. And so there's a couple of things what I really feel from your images. One is the connection between you and your subject, that whenever you're looking at your images, you can really see that there's this very, very strong connection.
Yeah.
um, and the second thing what I've noticed, and that was like a big even for me at that time, was the retouching process, that you could
Right.
really um, bring something very, very interesting to the image through the retouching process. And what I'm talking about mainly is the toning of the images, because that was one of the things which really bring the flavor to the images. So my question is, well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the connection, how you actually approach how to connect with your subject to the level that you can really feel that the connection is really strong. And then I want to talk a little bit more about this, again, final, those good results, is how you process those images afterwards to bring that specific tonality and flavor, which just enhance those images to completely different level.
Sure. So when it came to connecting with people and expressions, um, I I guess what made me realize how important it is was being friends with Peter Hurley,
Hmm.
and he was the headshot guy. And right when I was starting, that's when he was, gaining popularity, and I was amazed at the way he was connecting with his subjects. So when I saw that, it sparked something inside me that said, you know what? I think that this is the most important thing, connecting with people and capturing those expressions. That's what's going to make it unique. That's what's going to make you stand out over other photographers. Because over all these years, I've met so many talented photographers, but I haven't seen them really progress far in their career because they're not connecting with their subjects correctly. People,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, a portrait, the most important part of a portrait is what you're capturing, right? And what you're capturing is the expression of the person you're working with. So I decided to exercise myself and to get good at it. I opened up a project called The Project, I think it was called. That
Hmm.
was when I approached 100 photographers and I took their headshots. I don't know if you remember or
Yeah, I
not.
remember that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Now it's kind of clicking. Yeah.
I figured, you know what? I think that they're the easiest people for me to be able to get on board, because I couldn't get 100 strangers, but I could get 100 photographers because I was already popular in the photography world. So it was very easy for me to get photographers to agree to come in front of my camera. However, photographers, as you know, don't feel comfortable in front of the camera.
Yes.
They never do. So
Yes, I
I
think.
said, I said if I could speak to them and make them feel comfortable in front of the camera, I could probably do that with anyone.
Mhm.
So over the years, I just got a lot of practice through that project to connect with people. and that really translated well when I went off into the fashion world, and even working with kids, adults, strangers, stepping in front of my camera, just knowing what to say, how to speak to them.
Mhm.
It's all about just being genuine yourself with them, not asking them generic questions like, "Oh, it's great weather outside. What are your plans for the rest of the day?" No, I right away know exact. I watch their face, I watch their expression, I watch their body, and I know exactly. I'll say, "Hey, I see you're nervous right now. You've never been in front of the camera. Okay, let's do this and this and this." And I know how to take their mind off of that and
Mhm.
quickly pinpoint exactly what they want to hear and how to direct them.
So let me ask you like one question, because you mentioned that already, and I'm kind of I have similar personality. Like, we both introvert, and I know, the your personality has a huge impact on the shoot because you're conducting it, right? So
Right.
do you think it's something that we have to learn as a kind of another skill set? We need to kind of, learn how to deal with people, or this is something that, like we should kind of like, how I can describe this, because for me it was a huge challenge, right? Talking to
Yeah.
people and just knowing what they feel and making them open up to you. And I know it was a long process for me to figure it out, like, how this whole thing look like for you. You had to learn those things, or this whole thing come naturally to you? how
um,
how, how was it?
that's a good question. So, you know, I think that the first step is that you need to become comfortable with yourself.
Mhm.
You have to be confident with yourself. And people probably go to therapy for such
Yeah.
things. But once you feel good about yourself, confident about yourself, you give yourself room for error, then it becomes a little bit easier to work with people, because then you stop thinking about yourself, you stop being nervous about yourself, and you're able to just focus on the person in front of you. It's a lot of work, but I think that some people are naturally born with it.
Mhm.
So I think that photography, here's another example, photography. I think the photographers that end up being very successful are the ones with good judgment. They
Mhm.
know how, in the last moment, on the phone with a client, how to close a deal. They know how to understand what the client needs and respond to them accordingly. And so I think that it's the same thing with connecting with people in front
Mhm.
of the camera, or inside of a room. It's really something that you just have it in you, knowing how to de escalate possible situations that come up, how to connect people, like I said, in a very genuine manner. And this is something that I guess your personality just has. I mean, I meet photographers all the time. You meet the photographers who are super charismatic and are able to, direct the room, make sure everything in the room is easygoing. And then there's photographers who are, they come in a room and they're very nervous. Um, they're, their voice is very loud. They're getting upset quickly and easily. People in the room are afraid of the photographer. So I think that uh, your personality is is really something that you got to work on, and either you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
It's a hard subject to speak about because it's not something that you could easily pinpoint and give a person, here's the top 5 ways to have a good personality. It's either, you know
Yeah.
it's hard subject to speak about for sure.
Absolutely. But you know what? It's interesting that, photography, it's not also about learning about, your subject, whatever, but it's, as you said, and I 100% agree, it's also a process of learning about ourselves, how we can, deal with some of those situations, how we can
Correct.
manage ourselves, and make sure that we're on the right path. But also what I found, and I'm sure we can also kind of talk a little bit about it, that sometimes people try to fake somebody else, and I know exactly what you like. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, that they try to be like ex photographer because they have this amazing photography, but it doesn't work for them, and I've seen this on
Right.
countless
You have to
occasions,
be
right?
yourself. You got to be
Yeah.
yourself. That's the number one. People see right through it.
Yes. Yeah, they can sense
People,
it right on the
in a
spot, for sure.
second, people can sense it. If you have too, if you're not humble enough, if you got too big of an ego, people sense that right away in a
Right away.
second.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump to the next part of the question about um, creating those images. And I want to talk a little bit about the color theory. And I know I'm just kind of like, jumping from one subject to another. And I want to bring your, in a second, I'm going to bring your Instagram so we can see on some of those images. And the reason I want to talk about it, because I found color has amazing impact on the images. And it seems like you mastered the color theory. You understand, what colors brings what emotions and all this stuff. And
Right.
I remember that was my biggest challenge through all the years. And I remember when I bought your course, that was one of those things which really impact me, that I need to learn about color. And I remember through your retouching course, you really kind of understand which direction you should go, where a lot of photographers getting completely lost. So first of all, what I want to ask you, like, how did you learn this stuff? Is like more of experience, you just trying what works, what doesn't work, or you had this already in you that, okay, you see the colors the way that you could really easily implement them on your images.
Yeah. Um, you know, I think there's two types of people out there. Okay. There's the people who are naturally artists.
Hmm.
Naturally, without studying anything, they are able to pick up on what looks good and what does not look good. I've met these kind of people all the time. Uh, they're the people who have good judgment. Okay. Now, I don't think that I am that person. Okay. I think I am the second kind of person. The second kind of person is someone who is ambitious.
Hmm.
An ambitious person will not give up until they figure out what it is that looks good and what does not. And by just, watching a lot of videos, looking at pictures, watching how people respond to the pictures, I was able to study what looks good and what does not.
Hmm.
And so once I was able to um, put out enough work in a world early in my career, I studied what people liked and what they didn't like. And as soon as I found what they did like, I just kept on doing that. So at
Hmm.
first, it was a lot of trial and error. And then once I found my look, I just stuck to that look. Now, people often ask me, you shoot in so many different kinds of locations with so many people, so many different lighting conditions, photography, video, and you keep getting the same exact look. So, what are you doing in Photoshop? What are you doing when you do your editing to get that look? And I always try to tell them that you guys are looking at it the wrong way. Everyone's looking at the work thinking that I gained this look through Photoshop and post
Hmm.
production. And that's not the case at all.
Hmm.
And the proof is so many people have been on my shoots before. I'm shooting and then I show them the back of my camera, the results. Like, what? It looks like you already edited the photo. That looks
Hmm.
like we don't even have to do anything. And that's when I realized that it's not the post production. It's my style of photography and my style of lighting.
Hmm.
Now, I've shared this process many times. There's no secret behind this at all. I
Hmm.
underexpose when I'm shooting. That's all it is. I'm underexposing. Now your lighting has to be coming from the right angles, but underexposing gives you that rich skin color and skin tone. Because
Hmm.
when you're underexposing, it really brings out the details in the skin.
Hmm.
Now, if you have your lighting right, then you're looking at the shadows just as much as you're looking at the highlights. If you click on any of my portraits, let's say, I don't know, click on any of the portraits, you'll see how right there, you see how the sides of the nose, there's shadows. On the sides of the cheeks, there's shadows. Side of the forehead, there's shadows. Bottom of the forearm, there's shadows. People are always looking at the highlights. They always forget to look at the shadows. The
Hmm.
only way that the highlights are going to stand out is if you also have shadows. You have to look at both, and you have to have equal amount of both of them. That's
Hmm.
what gives contrast to the photo. That's what makes it look 3D. That's what makes it jump out. because the photo is really two-dimensional. It's flat. It's on your screen. What's going to make it look 3D is having foreground, middle ground, and background. And the same goes into the skin. You have the highlights, which is your foreground, the shadows, which is your background, and that's what makes the subject pop out at you. And then the next question is the color toning. Color toning is very, very easy once you have the lighting good on the subject's skin. Once you're in Photoshop, what you're doing is you're doing split toning. Again, this is no secret. Every photographer knows split toning. It's when you're taking one color, putting in the highlights, and an opposite color in the shadows. And the opposite colors are always complementary colors that you need to use. So if you look at any complementary color wheel online, you just go to Google and you Google complementary colors, you'll find a wheel. Anything opposite from each other on the wheel, it's complementary to each other. So if you stick highlights if you stick yellow in the highlights of the skin, then you add purples or blues into the shadows of the skin. If you stick cyan in the highlights of the skin, over here you have cyan in the portrait you have right here. There's cyan in the highlights, there's yellow in the highlights. If you go look at the shadows, you're gonna have red in the shadows, and you're gonna have blues in the shadows. And that's what gives you that amazing color, that creamy color that everyone talks about.
Absolutely. So tell me, because we talk a little bit about it, about the evolution in your career when it comes to the lighting. So you started with natural light, and then we talk a little bit that because of some of those challenges shooting in a natural light, you move on to the artificial light. Can you tell me a little bit about the process itself? Because I remember for me, was a little bit of challenging, going from natural light to strobes, and because it's a completely different dynamics, it's a completely different approach. You have to understand lighting a little bit different way. Even the principles are kind of the same, but it's again learning process how to understand this better. So what was your path, and how does whole thing look over 15 years of your career? How much changes you see when it comes to lighting your work?
Okay, so when I first started, it was all natural light, all day and night, natural light. Slowly, as I started getting the fashion jobs, I realized that I have to start implementing strobes. And so I started simple. Simple always wins. I started with an octabox, a nice big 3-4 foot one, and a strobe. And just with one, I did trial and error. I'll put my subject, where I want them, and then I would just hit them with a light at the lowest power. And eventually, enough trial and error, I started learning how the flash works, and then I went into the studio and I did the same thing for ecom. Started with only 2 lights, and I still only use those 2 lights. My rule when it comes to the strobes is keep it simple, keep the light soft, and you're gonna win. Just think about one big octa as a big window. You just walk around with that in the lowest power, aim it in different directions. I still am not a technical genius when it comes to the strobes, but because I did enough trial and error, I kind of know what's going to work and what's not going to work. At this point, strobes is a big part of what I do because I'm shooting indoors a lot in all different lighting conditions. So I have a nice collection of different modifiers, from beauty dishes to reflector, barn door, snoots, I have 7 different kinds of octaboxes in different shapes, and they each have their own uses. I know that if I'm looking for, harsh sunlight, boom, bare bulb with a reflector. If I'm doing a beauty setup, I'm using a beauty dish for those nice contrasty features on the face. If I'm doing a large group shot, I'm going with 2 big octaboxes. So the best thing I could knowledge I could give over to anyone starting now, if you want to get to use strobes, is first master natural light. So you understand how natural light hits the face, what's flattering, where you want the light to chisel out the face, and where you want shadows. Once you figure that out, and you feel comfortable with natural light, then you bring in 1 strobe. And then eventually, a year later, you'll start working with the second one. And I've seen your setup, and that's what you do. You have your main light, front camera left, and then you have your kicker in the back camera right. And you found something that works for you. Just keep trying something until you find the right combination that works for you.
Absolutely. So now I want to jump into a couple other stuff. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about your career, and because you started with portraits, and then you slowly start moving more into the fashion, and it was more as a conscious decision, or you want to be more creative. Can you tell me about this process? Because I'm also kind of intriguing, like how you navigate through all sorts of different things, going to like really high end fashion work right now.
Right. So I started off doing portrait work.
Hmm.
It was the easiest genre that I was able to do to just quickly make money. It was even family portraits. It was just portraits of corporate headshots, stuff like that. And then I got a couple fashion jobs that came my way. And when I did them, I said, you know what? Wow, I'm
Hmm.
good at it. I like it. This is what I want to do. And since I wasn't in a saturated market. I was able to easily
Get it.
um, jump right in and not have too much competition. We're talking 12 years ago.
Mm,
So at that time, Instagram wasn't around when I started fashion photography. There was barely any photographers doing it. It was so easy to just get into the market at that time, especially because I had a pretty nice following. I had a strong portfolio. And I just had to make up my mind. For a couple of years, I struggled. I did
mhm,
not take any other jobs, but I didn't have kids. I didn't have a lot of expenses. So it was easy for me to, um, just focus on my goal and eventually reach it. So once I started doing fashion for a bunch of years, my main goal was to just have a very good connection with my clients, keep them happy so that they could keep coming back to me. Every
mhm,
6 months, I wanted them to come back. So I kept them happy, whatever it was. I wasn't charging that much, but I focused on keeping the relationships good, building my name, and eventually that paid off. About 3 years ago, I finally met the right teammates, which is my
mhm,
team now. And so everything that I was doing is now split up over three people. Well, the hair and makeup artist that I met, an amazing one. I said, you know what, we're working full time with each other. It worked out. Then I met my other teammate, which takes care of all of the details of the photo shoot, the styling, booking models, locations. Those were all
mhm,
stuff I was doing. But now that I met someone who had really good judgment, had really good taste, and it was just the right partner, it just took off. And
mhm,
right away from the get go, we decided that we're going to stick together. And now we're able to split the jobs up evenly between us. And it really took me up to the next level
mhm.
in what I'm providing to clients.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about the current situation when it comes to photography. I want to kind of, pick up your brain a little bit because, we're going through massive disruptions when it comes to AI, cell phones and all this,
Yeah.
crazy stuff, which I'm not saying taking away our jobs, but making this industry more saturated. And specifically I want to talk a little bit about AI because I see
Right.
there is a huge discussion over this that I remember. I don't know, like, did you shoot film back in the days, or went? No, okay. So I remember in my case that when digital came, there was like a massive storm of people kind of losing their mind that digital coming in, and I see this exactly the same scenario when it comes to AI. And even I see this on Facebook groups where people just fighting back and forth, about AI. What's the future? So what is your take on it? Are you thinking this is gonna take over photography, is going to make our jobs easier? Can we take
Uh,
some kind of like
you want to know? I have no idea what's going to happen in the future with
mhm,
AI and whether it's going to take our jobs or not.
okay.
It probably will. Okay.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of people out there that are now using AI to create, ads, stuff like that. I've seen
Mhm.
it. I've come to peace with it
Okay.
the same way I've come to peace with death. You know,
Okay.
I we're all eventually gonna die.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Eventually, we're not going to be able to do this photography the way we have been for the past 10 years. It's going to slow down, or, you know, there still will be jobs always available, but eventually it will slow down, or it may not exist anymore. Or there may be a new, better kid charging less, doing a better job than me on a block that all the clients go to. I'm fine with that. You know, for now, I am using AI as much as I possibly could. I'm using it to edit my images. I'm using AI to respond to clients when it comes to emails. I'm using AI to help choose my photos. And so, you know, I am not against AI at all. It's here. I'm going to use it as much as I possibly could. Anyone who isn't is probably the same kind of guy who didn't want to post anything on Instagram when Instagram first came out. If you start, you know, giving pushback on incoming trends, you're going to get left behind. That's what's going to happen. From the get-go, I say, you know what? Facebook pages, boom. Instagram, boom. TikTok, boom. Reels, boom. Right now, I'm making more because of Reels and making videos than I am on photography. Because right away, I say, you know what? Wow, this is where the market's going. That day, I realized that's happening. I picked up my Sony camera and I started shooting videos. I had no idea what I was doing. A week later, I knew what I was doing. And now, 3 years later, I am getting all the jobs I'm getting now because of Reels. People aren't using photography nearly as much anymore.
So you're basically saying you have to adopt to anything what is coming our way, and there's no time for waiting or debating or arguing. You just take it and you go with the flow.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about your business, because the one thing also, based what I understand and based what I see, you're not only really good photographer, but you're also good businessman. How we can navigate this whole thing these days, and also you living in New York, which is big city. There's probably very saturated with all sorts of different photographers, and I know you create your own path to success, starting with sharing the knowledge, creating your own specific style. But what would you say to someone who's starting off, what they can do to somehow be successful in this industry? Because it's not easy. You have your own experiences. What would be your advice on this?
My advice would be anyone who wants to get into photography right now is sell your camera and go buy real estate. That's what I say. It's not easy at this point. It's not easy at this point to start photography and be successful in it. Even when I was started 15 years ago, I wasn't planning on making money doing this. I said, you know what, that this is going to be my hobby. I went to business school. I wanted to become an architect. I had all different kinds of dreams. Photography was not one of them. I saw success in photography, and so I continued to pursue it. But it was never my goal from the first day I bought my camera. It's very difficult to, make it as an artist. There's 100,000 photographers in New York City. Probably 98,000 of them are not making a full-time living. Forget about making a comfortable living, supporting a family. So it's not easy. I'm going to be real with you. It's not easy. But for the few who do want to do it, or people who are already doing it and want to take it to the next level, here's my tips on how to be successful, really not just in photography, but any kind of industry. And it is these three things, really what it comes down to, is you got to be quicker than everyone else at your service. Okay, you got to be quicker. You got to be better than everyone else. And you got to be more cost effective than everyone else. These three things. Everyone says clients cannot expect to get 3 out of 3 things. If you are very good and you're very fast, then you must be very expensive. Or if you're very expensive and you're very quick, or if you're very cheap and you're very quick, then the quality must not be good. Forget all that. Forget this triangle thing that the world has put into your head, that you could only be providing 2 out of those 3 things. You got to figure out how to do all 3 things better than everyone else, and that's what's going to help you dominate the market. For years, I was undercutting with my rate and
Mhm.
I was quicker than everyone else and better than everyone else. And that's how I got my foot in the door. Once I got my foot in the door, I figured out different ways to raise my rates. Whether it was convince clients to do 2 days of photo shoots instead of 1 day photo shoot.
Mhm.
Convince clients that they need more images, edit images.
Mhm.
Provide clients with extra services like you could pay extra to have me color your images. Video was the biggest difference was when I started doing the video. I started charging for reels and for website videos. Now think about it this way, right? Your day rate is $3,000, right? And and as a photographer, let's say for a photo shoot for a company. Now, tell them, listen, if you go find someone to shoot video for your reels and website video, you're probably going to pay another $3,000, right? Well, for
Mhm.
1,500, I'll do extra $1,500. I'll make video for you as well. That's it. That's all I did. I raised
Mhm.
my rate to be less than if they had to go find a photographer and a filmmaker. And so I was making more money. Just the same camera I'm taking pictures with, flip it into video mode, shoot 5 seconds of videos here and there, boom, have an editor edit it, and right there you made more money. So
Mhm.
I figured out how to do all these three things, and I think anyone who focuses on this and not themselves, you focus on what you're providing to the client, not focus about yourself as an artist, then I think that you'll be successful because
Mhm.
that's how you get into the market. That's how you dominate the market.
Absolutely. So how you balance your creativity? Because and this is something what I want to ask you because as I said, you have really distinctive look for everything what you do. There is consistency from one image to the video. I can really see that there is some connections between those images. And how you deal with clients, like when a client comes to you, like this is what you say, okay, this is what you're going to get, this is what I do, or you also open to some kind of like room for pushing the client their creativity, their ideas. How you balance it, this whole thing? Because I've noticed in my experiences, sometimes clients want to push everything on you, but you also want to keep up your integrity, and you have to keep up what's you believe in, right? So how this whole thing works in your case?
Okay, so the partner that I have, she understands the quality over quantity thing.
Mhm.
She understands my style. I like her style. She likes my style. We have mutual taste in art. So she's the one who speaks to clients for the most part now. I just show up and I do the job and I go home. So, but I'll give you my experience based on before I worked with her and how
Mhm.
I was speaking to clients myself before working with my team. So I made it very clear to clients: listen, if you expect, if you come into a photo shoot with a specific style you want, I'm going to do that style for you. Okay.
Mhm.
Most likely, you're coming to me because you saw my work and you like it. So the more you trust me, the more chances that you're going to get work like you see in my portfolio, which I'm guessing is why you came to me. So I try to help them understand through conversations beforehand. Um, Even if they have their own style or have their own goals of what they want from a photo shoot, I still try to create a couple images for myself for my own portfolio in my own style. So, for example, I like half body portraits. I like headshots. So during a fashion shoot, let's say I'm shooting the full dress in a location, I'll notice, the model looks exceptionally great with what they're wearing.
Mhm.
I'll say, hey, can I grab a quick half body shot, quick headshot? And I'll just take a couple steps in, grab a headshot, and that's what I'm going to post. That's what I'll show the client, and they'll look likely like that more than anything else I
Mhm.
created all day. So even if even if they don't allow me the space, I still try to sneak in my own look for a couple portraits here and there. But I'm like I said, I'm more of a businessman than I am a photographer. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I'm listening to what the client wants and I'm trying to create what they want. I want them to be happy. I want them to walk away and feel like I listened to them and I created what they want.
So let's kind of unpack this a little bit. And what I want to ask you, because this is something which you said a few seconds ago, kind of intrigued me, that you more businessman rather than photographer. So what is the biggest mistake photographers do nowadays when it comes to business? Because I've noticed, and I'm sure you've seen that probably across every photographer, that sometimes they're really good artists. They can produce amazing work, they can create amazing stunning images, but when it comes to selling it, it's something they cannot really overcome, and they're struggling with this. So what would you say, based on your experience and based on your knowledge, what is the biggest mistakes photographers do when it comes kind of combining to those two skill sets? Like, why they're struggling so much with the business side of it?
I think that the biggest issue with artists in general is they are they are not able to be flexible and they're not
Mhm.
able to negotiate. I
Okay.
think that um, if you want to be successful, you have to be willing to be flexible
Hmm.
and you have to negotiate with your clients to find a happy medium in between what you want and what they want.
Hmm.
If you go into any situation, any meeting, any phone call, any initial encounter with a client with me, this is what I provide, this is what I do, this is my day rate, do you want me, yes or no? If you go in with that attitude, you're likely not getting the job. If you
Hmm.
go in and reverse that and say, so what are you looking for? What's your budget? Where do you want to shoot? How much content do you want? You listen, 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 listen
Hmm.
to everything they're saying, and then you come up with a tailored response to them, you're likely to book the job. That's how it works. You listen
Hmm.
to them and you say, okay, so I noticed you're trying to do ecom and lifestyle images on the same day. Well, if you don't have too much clothing, we could make that happen. The rate will be a little bit higher because I have to set up a studio to do the ecom and also do the lifestyle. But I highly suggest, if we have too much clothing, to do it on two separate days.
Absolutely. So let me ask you kind of similar question from different angle. And one of those biggest also challenges, what I've noticed with a lot of photographers, is the money. And I know when it comes to talking about the money, a lot of people getting nervous. They don't know what to ask for. From one hand, they want to get a job, but they're scared to tell how much they actually charge. Um, there's all sorts of different insecurities sometimes, I think, when it comes to talking about the money, especially with your clients. So what would be your advice when it comes to I don't know, advising photographers when they get to the point that, okay, we need to talk with our clients about the money, the budget? What is your approach? Are you telling them straight
Uh,
ahead, this is my prices, or you try to be more open and flexible and listen what the client is bringing to the table? What's your strategy to be successful in those type of negotiations whenever we hit the moment where, okay, now is the money talk?
okay. This is a very hard conversation to have because
Hmm.
anyone who says that they know exactly what formula to use or what to do
Hmm.
doesn't know what they're talking about.
Okay.
Simple
Absolutely.
as that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because because there's it's like saying, does God exist? No one has proof. No one knows. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's very it's very hard to it's very hard to know exactly how much to charge and how much to tell people
Hmm.
what to charge. For years, I believe I was not charging enough. I didn't
Hmm.
know how to charge more. One tip, I'll give you one tip that people could implement that maybe that'll help them is always start always start off with what is your budget.
Hmm.
Ask the client what their budget is for the job. Sometimes you get lucky and they give you a number, sometimes you don't. If they ask you what your rate is, you never want to be specific.
Hmm.
So what you do is you give them a range. You tell them that my rate for the day is $2,000 to $3,000 depending on what you want.
Mhm.
And then they say, okay, so can you please explain? Say, well, how long do you want me to shoot for? Where do you want me to shoot? How many images you want? As as we speak more, I'll get a better idea of what you guys are looking for. I'll be able to narrow down exactly what I'm going to charge. By creating that range,
Mhm.
the 2 to 3,000, whatever it is, even if the range is very small or very large, it plays a game in the client's head
Mhm.
because in their head they hear, oh, there's flexibility in the number. They're hoping it's 2,000, but you could charge 3,000 and they're still going to be okay with it because from the get-go you said it's going to be between
Mhm.
$2,000 and $3,000. As long as you're not giving them a set $2,500 for the day, in the head, since they heard that there's some kind of range, they're suddenly willing to have another conversation with you, to continue the conversation.
Mhm.
That's how it works. That's what I found works for me.
Yeah. I think it's a brilliant idea. And to be honest, I never used that because like and now I kind of understand the psychology behind it. Because if you tell them fixed number, they already it's with their budget or it's not, right? And then
Right,
you just automatically just shoot yourself in the foot because
right,
you just put yourself in the position that they either going to hire you or not. But giving
right,
them the range of numbers, as you said, you're just creating this game in their mind that, okay, you know what, we can work with this, we can somehow stretch it different directions to meet the goal. So
right. The
that's
main thing is from the initial conversation with a client is to hook them into continuing to talk to you.
Mhm.
In the back of their mind is being made about using you. Once their mind is made on using you, the number is not important anymore because they're already focused on it. Whether they give
Mhm.
you 2,000 or 3,000, it's not making a difference to them. They already decide they're using you. They already like you.
Yes.
So I never give them a set rate for the day. I
Mhm.
I never did that. It never
Okay.
you know they're always like, oh, that's too much.
Yes. No, no,
That
no. I
even
I
even if it
hear
was a
exactly what
thousand,
you're
even if it was $1,000, oh, too much.
saying.
So it's important to be vague but specific.
Okay. So let me kind of go to the next question. So, what's your advice or how you approach promoting yourself? Because I know these days we can promote ourselves on so many different levels. There's a social media, there is paid advertising, there is word of mouth. What is your, well, I don't want to say strategy, but how you approach promoting your work? What is most successful? And I know you've been in this industry for so many years, so you've built up huge audience, you've built up huge clientele, you've probably built all those elements on the very, very high level. But what works best for you for the last, let's say, 5-10 years?
Um, I am not the right person to answer this question
Okay.
because I I I never one time went after a client. Never in my life did
Hmm.
I go seeking for a job. I've
Okay.
never created any kind of paid advertisement ever in my life. Um, I just focused on genuine marketing of myself
Okay.
through social media, and by keeping clients happy, they spoke to their friends who came to me. When people see that I'm shooting for all these other people and a new line pops up, they come to me. So I never had to go advertising. Now, on a flip side, yeah, I have a brother who's a dentist in Cleveland, Ohio.
Hmm.
And this brother, as a dentist, he opened up a practice from scratch. He had zero patients 3 years ago, and he had to figure out how to get patients for his
Hmm.
practice. And so, he tried doing social media, already saturated. No one's going to find him that way. So he started just building a strong Google page for his business with pictures and videos. And he did a lot of SEO. He did a lot of Google ads. and he built up his practice, through Google Ads.
Hmm.
So, I don't know if you could do the same thing with photography, but
Hmm.
I never had to go out to do
Yeah.
marketing. But I'm sure if someone had to do that, they are able to do it through websites, Google, Facebook
Mm.
ads, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I found the personality also it's a big factor, right? And building your personal brand behind
Yeah,
photography, I think
yeah,
that's another huge thing. And I think you've done this really well because you not only built, the imagery, but also you've built the trust, you've built the your persona, which I've been always fascinated with because even through these courses, the videos you're producing, everything what you do,
right,
it resonates, right? So it's not
right.
just photography, but just who you are and how you approach certain things, how
Yeah,
you
I think
are.
that does play a big uh, role in your continued success because anyone could get a client one time
Mhm.
into the room to pay them. If you don't kick it off with the client, and build a connection with the client, if they don't feel comfortable with you, then they're likely not going to come back.
Mhm. Yeah.
So your personality, your persona, the way you are around people plays a vital role in
Mhm.
continued um, success and clients coming back to you. That's a very big deal. I've seen many times over the years, a client is using me, then they take a break from me for 1 or 2 seasons, they go to another photographer,
You come back.
and they come right back to me. I've seen it so many times. It happened to me last week. And when they come to me, it's not that, ooh, we love your photography. They just like me. So
Yeah.
they're back. There's so many other talented photographers out there,
Mhm.
that are able to create the same work I am. But a good personality is vital
Yeah.
in such a business.
And I think that's amazing advice because I think a lot of photographers forget about it. That working on your skills and photography, and then the body of work you're producing, but working on yourself, who you are, and how you can be better person for the clients and everybody who work with you. It's another massive skill
Right.
set which brings you the clientele. So I have one more question for, well, a couple more questions. The last one, well, I want to ask you about, because you've been in the industry for quite some time. So what is the biggest change you've noticed, since you started, and what is happening right now? Like what is the biggest transformation in this industry?
The biggest transformation was I realized it last week. I
Hmm.
had confirmation last week. I realized it a little bit earlier. Um, is the cell phone. The iPhone is producing very good photos and videos. And I was in New York City shooting for a footwear brand.
Hmm.
And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a couple models wearing gowns, wedding gowns. And I'm looking to see where the photographer is. There's no photographer. I was there for 2 hours, no photographer. And I see two, three girls with their phones creating content. And it was very apparent that it was a legitimate fashion shoot. I mean, the model, her styling, her hair, makeup, they kept on switching gowns. I was like, wow, they are straight up doing a fashion shoot right here with a cell phone. So then I turned to a model that I'm working with. I'm like, does this happen often where you get hired and people are shooting the content with their cell phone? And then he's like, yeah, actually, I myself get jobs like that. My girlfriend takes the content of me all the time. I say, what? That's crazy. He says, yeah, let me explain to you what's going on. When it comes to social media, the cell phone photos and videos are getting much better engagement. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hi, Charlie. Downstairs in my office. Come. Sorry, my son
That's
just
okay.
came home from school. uh, so he says the engagement created by phones is so much greater than with a professional camera because the second people scroll and they see professional content, they're like, all right, what is this person selling to me? Hi. How was school? Good. Okay, go play. I'll be done in a few minutes, okay?
Papa, can you ask your time if I could come over?
We are going to go over in a few minutes, okay?
No, it's in 4 hours on his birthday.
Oh, so...
It'll be 14.
Okay.
No, it'll be 20 minutes, and I'm not waiting 4 hours.
Okay, so give me 10 minutes, and then we'll call and see if he could come, okay?
Or you can give me your phone and call house phone.
In a minute. I'll be done in a minute, okay?
Okay, in like an hour, because he's getting home soon.
Okay.
Because I just got an hour, and he picked me up. So.
Okay, perfect. So as soon as people see, sorry about that.
That's
as soon as people see professional content, they say, "Oh, what is this guy selling? You know, what is this page selling?" Boom, they continue scrolling. It just looks like an ad to them. So I think that AI is not nearly as dangerous to our industry as the cell phone is. The cell phone really took us over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? From one hand, I 100% agree with you. But, you know, the one thing what I want to point it out that, you know, AI is not going to kill the creativity. If you're going to be creative, you're going to have some unique ideas. I think that's where, you know, the future, I think, lies nowadays, that you have to think outside of the box, right? And I think that was always a case to be successful. As soon as you start thinking outside the box and doing things a bit different, then your success kind of kicks in.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm not going to take more of your time. That was honestly very, very informative and educational interview. Thank you for sharing some of those tips. You know, I think even I've learned so much by talking to you, because, you know, you have very, very I would say business oriented perspective on some of those things, which is I think a lot of photographers definitely need that. And also that's why I create those interviews, to get to, you know, those photographers world, to kind of give them a little bit of tips and advice on how to kind of approach certain challenging things in their career. So thank you so much. And thank you for being inspiration for so many years, my friend. I've been it's been a real pleasure that, you know, after so many years, just seeing you on social media and watching your videos, I'm honored to speak to you. That's really means a lot.
Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I love I will photography.
yes, and you see, you know, you've got a lot of information to share, right? So it's like there's so much. We could talk for another couple hours. And
definitely.
But hopefully, you know what, at some point I'll reach out to you, and if we could do this again, I would be excited to have you on the show again, and dive deeper in some of those stuff. Not to mention, you know, this whole industry is evolving with speed of light nowadays, the way I see it. You know, every 6 months there's so many different changes, and then, you know, just like constant roller coaster how this whole thing is changing.
Of course.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I will link everything to this podcast. You know, I'm sure I don't even have to push it more, because you have such a huge audience that, you know, people know you. But anyways, I'll put it up there. And I truly want to thank you for taking your time and, you know, finding the time in your busy schedule to talk to me.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.